At one point during this debate, there was a tough question asked of Pete Buttigieg, which was shocking because that doesn't usually happen. And it had to do with race in South Bend, Indiana. Take a look.
Mayor Buttigieg, you say you've had trouble earning the support of black voters because you're unknown, but you've been campaigning for a year now, and polling shows you with next to no black support that you'll need in order to beat Donald Trump. Is it possible that black voters have gotten to know you and have simply decided to choose another candidate?
The black voters who know me best are supporting me. It's why I have the most support in South Bend. It's why among elected black officials in my community who have gotten into this race, by far most of them are supporting me. And now, nationally, I am proud that my campaign is co-chaired by a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and to have support right here in Iowa from some of the most recognizable black elected leaders, from Mayor Hart of Waterloo to former Representative Berry in Black Hawk County. Now, the biggest mistake we could make is to take black votes for granted, and I never will. The reason I have the support I do is not because any voter thinks that I'm perfect. It's because of the work that we have done facing some of the toughest issues that communities can. Not from the luxury of a debate or a television panel or a committee room, but on the ground. Issues from poverty to justice in policing. And I'm proud to say we've been nationally recognized for our work as a race-informed city on delivering greater economic justice, that we have reduced use of force by leading the region in transparency around the use of force in policing. Of course, there is a much longer way to go in my community and around the country, but I will be a president whose personal commitment is to continue doing this work.
All right, I want to go straight to Ida because the frustration on her face, like we made like faces at each other.
Because we're both nodding our heads as people of color. First of all, not just is Oscar so white, but the debate's so white too. Let's just start there. It's so disheartening to see all these people go on and on and on. And you know, in the moment, the person they decide to ask the questions about people of color is the person who's most tone deaf and blinded when it comes to people of color. But it's just so infuriating when somebody says, we've been nationally recognized as being race sensitive by the race insensitive people. Like, who recognized you? The police is the police. And when we hear stuff like, well, the cops say we're not racist. Do you hear how that sounds to the people of color? With the blank look on the face. First of all, the debate did not talk about us. Only Tom included us when he talked about climate and how it affects our communities. There were not, to see a black woman on there and not ask the questions. Besides, that's the easy question to ask the guy who we all know has so many problems with black people that a writer from The Root addressed him in an op-ed. That's a given. Nobody talked about our communities. There was no talk about immigration. You didn't hear anything about the brown people and the black people. And that is my problem with all political parties, is that they only talk about us. They only include us when it is convenient for them. It is not something off the top of the dome when you are like, we're talking about all of the issues in America, this disparity, these issues with black and brown people, that is really a problem. And if you want our votes, you cannot only use us as a talking point. We should be at the top of the list when you're talking about the issues that are affecting the communities in this country. And that is where you lose me. That is where you lose me.
So in terms of, first of all, just on a lighter note, he said, I am not going to take the African-American vote for granted.
Please, he literally told protesters, black protesters from South Bend who have been completely neglected by him, I'm not asking for your vote. That's how he responded to them.
Yeah. Well, no, maybe he's not taking it for granted because he doesn't have it.
Yeah.
So, but seriously though, so her question did sound, very challenging. You've not been, is it possible that the African-American voters have gotten to know you and don't like you? But actually, to your point, Ida, it would have been great if she actually had framed it in the context of his record in South Bend. It's not just whether they know you well enough or they generically like you or don't like you. There's a reason behind it. The reason is Black Lives Matter in South Bend, for example, is totally against Buttigieg and has enormous problems with his record. The person you were alluding to at the root, Michael Harriot, co-published a piece with us talking about his invisible black police because he got rid of the black police chief. Half of the black officers in South Bend left by the end of his tenure in deep frustration. 10 of the black police officers had together said there's systemic discrimination against black police officers in this police department. Buttigieg did nothing about it. Our earlier reporting showed that cops on tapes that Buttigieg refused to release said white people are going to be back in charge. We got Buttigieg's donor to fire the black police chief. Now, we asked to release the tapes, and Buttigieg has, at a minimum, his lawyer has seen those tapes, has heard those tapes, but they won't release them. And what does that do? It protects the racist cops on those tapes and endangers the African American community in that town. Now, those are devastating specific examples about his tenure. The only thing he's ever done is be mayor of South Bend, right? And so for him to say, hey, I got a couple of black politicians to endorse me, and my problem is solved. No, it is not solved. And the mainstream media has been terrible in following up on that South Bend story. Completely absent. It's not just the black police force that's invisible, it's the national media that's invisible on that issue. And unfortunately, it's been African Americans in South Bend that have been invisible to Pete Buttigieg. Time after time, they've asked him to follow up on different issues, massive issues, people who were shot and killed, a young boy who was hanged, etc. And he says, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and never ever followed up in any of those instances.
The mainstream media doesn't care about those people either. And the other thing is, that whole thing about him and Joe Biden talking about how the black people really love me. If I was the black people around them, I would check them right now. The African American community loves me more than everybody else up here. Why? Because you were with Obama. You know how insulting that is to people of color? And him, like, the black people I roll with love me. The black people that roll with you are on your payroll. What about the black people who can't walk down the street without getting pulled over wrongfully?
And I noticed it's more a stylistic comment I want to make. I noticed what it is about Buttigieg's delivery that's so irritating. It's because he is rehearsed and he does this thing that Diane Sawyer used to do a lot, like the look of like real concern, Like he does this thing where he's like, South Bend has been recognized as the top city for racism. And I want to take credit for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like he does this thing and it's like, we see right through you. Now, obviously I said like stuff that's actually true. He said a lot of stuff that isn't true about how he's, South Bend is nationally recognized. The only national recognition it's got when it comes to race relations is how discriminative the police department has been and how he has neglected the black community in his own town. If he hasn't been able to control the racism in his own town, the situation in his own police department, how is he gonna be a president? Yeah.
It was a sufficiently hard question that I can't really have expected for them to go harder on it. But one thing that I think would have been really timely to bring up right now is there's obviously justifiably a lot of concern that the primary process so far has pretty effectively weeded out non-white candidates. And the next phase of that is the way the states are structured. You have the most white states imaginable going first. And if it's like Joe Biden can say, yes, I'm white, I'll obviously have a bit of an advantage in Iowa and New Hampshire, but obviously I can point to more diverse states and I have a lot of support there. Bernie Sanders can do the same thing. Pete Buttigieg, if he succeeds, it is almost only because of Iowa and New Hampshire. He has nothing after those states. He's doing well in those. He's put all of his funding into those because he knows those are the only sorts of people who are going to affect him. If he doesn't get momentum coming out of those two states, he's got nothing in South Carolina, he's got nothing in Nevada. You think on Super Tuesday in the Deep South he's gonna do well? Like he is banking on the discriminatory nature of the electoral calendar to carry him through. And we're just a couple of weeks out from that first caucus. I would like to see more of a reckoning of how that might impact the primary.
That's a really good point.
I would like to see what his LGBTQ plus support looks like.
Yeah.
So because the media assumes that it would be high because he's in that community, but you shouldn't make that assumption. I'd be curious about the polling as well.
Right.
But the thing that gets under my skin is every time Biden brags about how he does well among African Americans because he was with Obama. Obama didn't pick you to do well with African Americans. Nope. He picked you to do well with white folks. So keep it real on that. So it gets under my skin every time. Of course, a moderator would never ask that question. Isn't it obvious that President Obama picked you to appeal to comfort white folks on the ticket, right? Because they would consider that to be rude. Now you can be rude all you want to Bernie Sanders and say he's going to bankrupt the country and he agrees with the Ayatollah, but you're not allowed to be rude to Joe Biden. So.
Right. So I'm glad that they at least asked him that tough question. I mean, that was the only tough question they asked him throughout this entire debate.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. We really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.